Please, sir, you have to pretend you are dead." The maid's words hit Dante Moretti like a bullet to the chest. It was midnight. Rain hammered against the tall windows of the Brooklyn mansion, like angry fists trying to break through. Elena Vasquez, his quiet, loyal maid, the girl who had scrubbed his floors for 3 years without complaint, who had survived orphanages and poverty and hunger just to keep her dying sister alive, stood shaking in his bedroom doorway with tears streaming down her face. She was only 26 years old, but her eyes carried the weight of a woman who had seen too much suffering. "Someone close to you is planning to kill you," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Someone you trust with your whole heart. Dante Moretti, the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast, the man who had built an empire from ashes and blood, felt his blood turn to ice. In 37 years, no one had ever made him feel fear. Until now. Who?" he demanded, his voice cold as steel. Elena took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to grip the doorframe to stay standing, and when she said the name, Dante's entire world shattered into a million pieces. It was someone he never saw coming, someone he had raised from childhood, someone he had given everything to, someone he loved more than life itself. And in 72 hours, Dante Moretti, the king of the New York underworld, would be dead. Hello friends, welcome to our story. Before we begin, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who loves a good story, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an update. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We want really to know. Now, let us find out who wants the most powerful mafia boss dead, and whether a poor maid can save him from his own blood. Dante Moretti stood frozen for a long, suffocating moment. Then he laughed, a sound that echoed through the dark room, cold and bitter, as if someone had just told him the worst joke in the world. "Marco," he said, his voice trembling with the effort of restraint. "My brother. The boy I raised from the time he was 10. The brother I gave everything. Money, power, the number 2 seat in this empire. And you're telling me he wants to kill me." He moved toward Elena, each step heavy, as though he were carrying the whole world on his shoulders. Elena backed up once, but her spine met the doorframe. There was nowhere left to run. Dante stopped directly in front of her, his face only inches from hers. "Do you know who I am?" he thundered, his voice like storm thunder in the night. "I am Dante Moretti. I have killed more people than the number of years you have been alive. I have buried men who dared to lie to me under the cement foundation of this very house. And you, a maid plucked off the street, dare to come here in the middle of the night and invent stories about my brother." Elena said nothing. She only stood there, tears still falling, yet her gaze did not waver. She was afraid enough that her heart felt as if it might burst from her chest, but she did not step back. She had endured too much in her life to know that sometimes silence is stronger than 1,000 words. "If you are lying," Dante went on, his voice dropping into a whisper that was more terrifying than any roar, "I won't kill you right away. No, I will go to your little sister lying in my hospital. Sophia, isn't it? 19 years old, a heart condition, waiting for surgery. I know everything about her. Elena Vasquez. I know where you live, what you eat, how many hours you sleep each night. And if you're playing some kind of game with me, I swear on my mother's life, you will watch your sister die before I let you follow her." For the first time, Elena truly trembled, not out of fear for herself, but out of fear for Sophia. But she forced the terror down her throat and opened her mouth. "Sir," she said, her voice raw from crying but each word still clear, "I have worked in this house for 3 years. 3 years of mopping your floors, washing your clothes, cleaning up the things you don't want to see. 3 years in which I have never told you a lie. Not once. So why? Why would you think I would choose tonight to begin lying? What do I gain by making this up? I am nothing but a poor maid with a meager wage. If you don't believe me and you kill me tonight, my sister will die because no one will pay the hospital bills. I have everything to lose and nothing to gain. So why would I risk my life to come here and tell you this if it were not the truth?" Dante fell silent. He stared into Elena's eyes, searching for any sign of deception, any flicker that would reveal a lie. But he found nothing except genuine fear and the desperation of a woman wagering everything. "What did you hear?" he asked, his voice still cold but with less of that fury. "Tell me, every detail. Don't leave out anything." Elena drew in a deep breath, and she began to speak. "2 nights ago," Elena began, her voice lowering as though she were reliving that very moment. At around 11 o'clock at night, I was cleaning the study on the second floor. You know that room, right next to the large library. I thought everyone in the house had already gone to sleep, so I worked very slowly, trying not to make a sound. And then I heard footsteps. 2 men entered the library. I heard footsteps approaching. There was no time to leave, so I hid behind the heavy velvet curtains just before 2 men entered the library. They locked the door, but they did not know I was there. Elena paused, her eyes drifting into the distance, as if the scene from that night were unfolding before her again. I recognized Mr. Marco's voice immediately, she continued. His voice is very distinctive, deep, and a little hoarse. The other man I did not recognize at the time, but his voice was cold, frightening, like someone who speaks about death the way others speak about the weather. Later I learned it was Victor Chen, the man Mr. Marco has been meeting privately these past few weeks. Dante stood motionless, every muscle in his body drawn tight like a string pulled to its limit. "What did they say?" he asked, his voice reduced to a whisper. Elena swallowed. "Mr. Marco said that by this Friday everything would be over, that they would make it look like a heart attack. My brother works too hard. Everyone knows that. No one will suspect a thing." Then Victor asked, "What about the servants? What about the people who work in the house? And Mr. Marco?" He laughed. "Sir," he laughed as if it were the most ridiculous question in the world. He said, "They are nothing, just a bunch of poor servants. Who would ever listen to their words?" Dante felt as if a knife had just been driven straight into his chest, but Elena was not finished. "There is more, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "This is the part that would not let me stay silent. Mr. Marco said terrible things about you. He said my brother has no idea how much I have hated him all these years. All those years I had to live in his shadow, watching him receive everything, power, respect, our father's love, and what did I get? Nothing but the crumbs he tossed my way. Every time our father looked at him with pride, I wanted to vomit. Every time he patted my shoulder and called me his brother, I wanted to strangle him right there. But I waited. I waited for 17 years, and now, finally, I will take back everything that should have been mine. I will take back everything that should have been mine." Elena stopped, her tears flowing more freely now. "I am sorry, sir," she said through her sobs. "I know these are horrible words. I know you do not want to hear them. But I heard everything. Every single word. I stood there behind that door, not daring to breathe, not daring to move, because I knew that if they discovered me, I would die that very night." Dante turned his back to Elena and walked to the window, staring out into the pitch-black darkness beyond the glass. The rain continued to pour as if the sky itself were crying with him. 27 years of brotherhood, he whispered to himself. But for 17 years he has hated me. Every smile, every embrace, every time he called me brother, it was all a lie. Every smile, every embrace, every time he called me brother, it was all a lie. All of it a performance. He pressed his hand against the cold glass, feeling the chill seep into his fingers. But it was nothing compared to the cold in his heart. Nothing compared to the truth he was now forced to face. His brother, his only brother, the one he had loved and protected his entire life, wanted him dead, and had wanted it for 27 years. Dante stood in silence for a long moment, his back still turned to Elena. Then he turned around and looked at her with something in his eyes entirely different from the rage of moments before. "Why?" he asked, his voice lowered. "Why would you risk your life to tell me this? You are only a maid. You could have pretended you heard nothing, kept doing your job, collected your monthly wages, and lived quietly. Why did you choose to stand here and face a man like me, knowing I could kill you at any moment?" Elena looked down at her calloused hands, hands that had scrubbed and washed and cleaned for more than 10 years. "Because I know what it means to lose family," she said softly. "I know what it means to be betrayed by those who were supposed to protect you." Dante said nothing. He only stood there and waited. And Elena began to tell her own story. A story she had never told anyone. "I became an orphan when I was 8, she said, her voice distant as if she were speaking of someone else. "My parents died in a fire. We lived in an apartment on the 5th floor of a decaying building in the Bronx. That night I woke up to smoke, to screaming, to the sound of flames. My father pushed me and Sophia toward the fire escape and told us to run down first, that he would follow right after. But he never did. My mother didn't either. They burned to death in the bedroom, trying to hold back the fire so we would have time to escape." Elena drew in a deep breath, fighting back the tears. "Sophia was only 2 then," she continued. She remembers nothing about our parents. She only knows me. We were sent to an orphanage, a terrible place I do not want to remember. Older children bullied the younger ones. The food was spoiled. The adults did not care. I learned how to fight at the age of 9, to protect Sophia from the bigger kids. I went hungry so she could eat because she was too small and too weak. When I was 16, she went on. I was old enough to leave and take Sophia with me. I dropped out of school and worked as a waitress, a dishwasher, a cleaner, any job that could earn money. We rented a tiny room in Queens, barely big enough for one bed and a stove, but it was our home. For the first time in 8 years, we had a place to call home. Elena's voice hardened with bitterness. When I was 18, the owner of the place where I worked started looking at me differently. He touched me when no one was around. He said if I behaved myself, he would raise my pay. I refused. I pushed him away, and that very night he threw me out into the street in the middle of winter. No wages, no belongings, nothing. I had to walk with Sophia for 5 hours through the snow to find a church that would let us sleep there for the night. Sophia nearly froze to death that night, and I swore I would never let anyone hurt my sister again. Elena lifted her eyes to Dante. 5 years ago, the doctors diagnosed Sophia with a congenital heart condition, she said, her voice breaking. She needed a surgery that cost $500,000. $500,000. To me, it was an unimaginable number. I worked 3 jobs at once, slept 4 hours a night, skipped meals to save every dollar for her. But it was never enough. Never enough. She glanced around Dante's lavish bedroom. Then I heard the Moretti house was hiring a maid, she said. The pay was 5 times higher than normal. Everyone was afraid. No one dared come. They said this place was a den of devils, that blood had once flowed across these marble floors. But I was not afraid. I had nothing left to fear. I had lost my parents, my childhood, everything. The only thing I had left was Sophia, and I was willing to walk into hell if it meant my sister could live. Elena looked straight into Dante's eyes. That is why I came here, sir. For 3 years I have cleaned your floors, washed your clothes, witnessed things I know I was not meant to see. But you have never harmed me. You paid my wages on time. You even paid the hospital bills last year when Rosa was sick, without her having to beg. You are a dangerous man, Mr. Moretti. But you are not an evil man without reason. And I could not stand by and watch a man like you be killed by the very person you loved most. Dante turned his back on Elena and walked slowly toward the window, the rain still falling, droplets striking the glass like funeral drums. He closed his eyes and memories surged in, wave after wave, impossible to stop. Marco, his brother, the 10-year-old boy sobbing in his arms the day their mother died, the child he had sworn to protect at any cost. Yet now, as he looked back, the pieces began to fit together in a way that was terrifying. He remembered 3 months earlier when he had walked into Marco's office without knocking. Marco had been on the phone, and the instant he saw him, he ended the call. Just a business call. Brother, Marco had said with that familiar smile. But now Dante remembered that the smile never reached his eyes. It never had. Then he remembered the secret meetings Marco had held in recent weeks, meetings he had not been invited to. When he asked, Marco had brushed them off as small matters not worth troubling him over, and Dante had believed him. He had always believed every word Marco said. He remembered the look in Marco's eyes whenever he was praised during meetings with partners. He had thought it was pride, joy at his brother's success. But now he saw it was something else, cold, dark, filled with hatred. It had always been there, right in front of him. And he had been too blind to see it. And Victor Chen, Dante whispered, his voice rough. Who is he? I do not know much about him, sir, Elena replied. I only know Mr. Marco began meeting him about 2 months ago. They usually met in the library at night after you had gone to sleep. I saw him a few times when I was cleaning late. He is tall, with black hair and very cold eyes. He looks like a man accustomed to killing. Dante opened his eyes. Victor Chen. The name was not unfamiliar. He was a professional assassin, one of the most dangerous men the underworld had ever known. No one hired Victor Chen for small jobs. He was only hired when someone wanted a person to disappear forever, without a trace. And Marco had hired him. Marco had hired an assassin to kill his own brother. Dante felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. He had given Marco everything: money, power, position, love. He had refused to marry because he did not want anyone to come between the two of them. He had killed without hesitation anyone who dared threaten Marco. And this was how Marco repaid him, with poison. with a dagger in the back, with a death disguised as a heart attack. He turned back to look at Elena, and in his eyes there was no longer anger or suspicion, only the endless exhaustion of a man who had just lost the most precious thing he possessed. "You said you have a plan," he said, his voice low and slow. "What plan? How can we prove what you have just told me? How can we catch Marco without him knowing in advance?" Elena stepped forward, her eyes lighting with a small, fragile spark of hope. She knew Dante had begun to believe her, and that was the first step toward saving his life. Elena drew in a deep breath before she began. "I have an uncle," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "His name is Frank Sullivan. He is an FBI detective who specializes in cases involving organized crime. He is the only person in my family who stayed in contact with me after my parents died. Years ago, he scrubbed my public records and buried our connection deep so that no one in your world would ever use me to get to him. He helped me through the hardest years of my life, and I trust him with my life." His voice edged with caution. "You want to bring the FBI into this. Do you know who I am? I am Dante Moretti. The FBI has been trying to put me in prison for 20 years. "I know, sir," Elena replied quickly. "But Frank does not care about you. He cares about catching people who plot murder, and if we do this the right way, you will not be implicated at all. Marco will go to prison, not you." Dante fell silent, weighing every word she said. "What is the plan?" he asked after a long moment. Elena stepped closer, her voice dropping as if someone might overhear, even though the room held only the two of them. "You have to fake your death, sir. It is the only way." Dante let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Fake my death," he repeated. "You want me, Dante Moretti, the most powerful mafia boss on the East Coast, to fake my death like a mouse hiding from a cat. Do you have any idea how insane that sounds?" "I know exactly how it sounds," Elena said firmly, "but please hear me out. Right now we have no evidence at all. I overheard Marco and Victor talking. But that is only my word. There is no recording, no video, nothing. If you confront Marco right now, what will happen?" Dante did not answer, but he knew. Marco would deny everything. He would cry, swear he was innocent, claim that this maid was slandering him, and the people in the organization, who would they believe? Marco, who had stood beside Dante for 27 years, or an unknown maid no one cared about? "You know I am right," Elena continued, reading the truth in his eyes. "Without evidence, no one will believe you. And worse, Marco will know. You suspect him. He will become more careful. He will change his plan. He will find another way to kill you, one you cannot guard against. But if you fake your death, everything changes. Marco will believe he has won. He will reveal his true nature. He will do things he would only dare to do once you are gone, and we will record everything, every word, every action, every piece of evidence. When you come back to life, you will have enough to bury him forever." Dante walked to the window and stared out into the night. His pride screamed at him that a man like him should never run, should never fake his death like a coward. But his reason knew Elena was right. Without proof, he could do nothing to Marco. And Friday was coming, 72 hours before his brother would kill him. "Frank Sullivan," Dante said slowly without turning around. "How much do you trust him?" Elena did not hesitate. "He is the man who saved Sophia and me from the streets when we had nowhere else to go," she said. "He is the man who gave us money when I could not find work. He is the only person in this world, besides Sophia, whom I trust completely. If he says he will help, he will help. He does not know how to lie." Dante turned back, his gaze piercing through Elena as if he were trying to read every thought in her mind. "And you?" he asked, his voice low. "How much can I trust you?" Elena straightened and met the eyes of the most feared mafia boss in New York without blinking. "You can trust me with your life, sir," she said, "because if I wanted to harm you, all I had to do was stay silent and let Marco do his work. I came here tonight not because I gain anything. I came because I owe you, and because I cannot close my eyes knowing a man is about to be killed by his own blood." The room sank into a heavy silence as Dante stood motionless, his gaze drilling into Elena as though he were trying to see straight through her soul. Outside, the rain kept falling, water striking the glass like the ticking of time slipping away. And at last, Dante spoke. "All right," he said, his voice low and unhurried. "I will follow your plan. I will fake my death. I will let Marco believe he has won. But you must understand one thing. Elena Vasquez." Elena felt as if an invisible hand had clenched around her heart. She knew what was coming would not be gentle. If this is a trap, Dante continued, walking slowly toward her, each step heavy like the pounding of a hammer. If you are working for Marco, or for anyone who wants me dead, if you betray me even once, I swear on my mother's soul, you will not be the first one to die. He stopped right in front of her, his face only inches away, his breath brushing her skin, cold and terrifying. Sophia, he spoke her sister's name like a curse. 19 years old, St. Mary Hospital, room 412, 4th floor, cardiology wing. I have people everywhere. Elena, I only need to make one phone call and your sister will never wake up again. Do you understand what I am saying? Elena felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. He knew. He knew exactly where Sophia was, which room, which floor. He could kill her sister at any moment he wished, but instead of trembling, instead of lowering her head and begging, Elena did something no one had ever dared to do in front of Dante Moretti. She looked straight into his eyes and did not blink. I understand, sir, she said, her voice strangely calm. You are threatening to kill my sister if I betray you. That is fair. But you should also understand one thing. I have lost my parents. I have lost my childhood. I have lost everything except Sophia. If I wanted to harm you, I would have 1,000 easier ways than coming here in the middle of the night to face you. I could stay silent and let Marco kill you. I could go to the police and collect a reward. I could do many other things, but I did not. I came here and stood before you knowing you could kill me at any moment. Why? Because I am not a traitor. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, now standing so close she could see every line on his forehead, every strand of gray at his temples. And when all of this is over, she said, her voice no longer shaking but steady as steel, when Marco is exposed and you are still alive, you will owe me, Mr. Moretti, you will owe me your life, and I will collect that debt. Dante looked at her, and in his eyes there was no longer threat or anger. Instead there was something else, surprise, curiosity, and perhaps, just perhaps, a trace of respect. You are the first person who has ever spoken to me like that and lived, he said slowly. Then I hope you will not be the last. Elena replied, her gaze unwavering. Dante remained silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Contact your cousin, he said. Tell him we have very little time. Friday is coming. And before then, Dante Moretti must die. The next morning, Elena left the Moretti estate before the sky had fully brightened, walking 15 minutes to a small cafe on the corner of Atlantic Street, a place she and Frank had agreed upon for emergencies, the cafe nearly empty at that hour, with only a few laborers drinking coffee before their early shifts. Frank Sullivan already seated in the far corner with his back against the wall and his eyes watching the door, a 45-year-old man with salt and pepper hair and the sharp gaze of someone who had spent his life hunting criminals. When he saw Elena enter, he stood and pulled her into a tight embrace. Are you all right? Frank asked, his voice thick with worry. Your message in the middle of the night nearly scared me to death. What happened? Elena sat across from him and lowered her voice to almost a whisper. I need your help, she said. This is a matter of life and death. And she began to tell him everything, about the night she overheard the conversation in the library, about Marco and Victor, about the plan to kill Dante Moretti, about the conversation with Dante the night before. Frank listened without interrupting, but his face grew paler with each detail. When she finished, he fell silent for a long moment, and then shook his head. No, he said flatly. Absolutely not. Have you lost your mind? You are talking about interfering in the internal affairs of the most powerful mafia family in New York. Do you have any idea how many people have died because they got involved with the Morettis? Do you want me to walk you straight into your grave, Uncle Frank? Elena said urgently. I know this is dangerous. I know it is, but I am already too deep. I have spoken to Dante. He knows that I know. If I pull back now, he will not let me go, and if Marco finds out, I will be dead. I have no way out. You are my only hope. Frank rubbed his forehead, his face twisted with anguish. You are asking me to help save the life of a mafia boss, he said bitterly. Dante Moretti, a man who has killed more people than anyone can count. A man the FBI has been trying to arrest for 20 years. I am not asking you to save him, Elena replied quickly. I am asking you to arrest Marco Moretti. Marco is the one plotting murder. Victor Chen is a hired killer. They are the criminals here. Dante is the victim. He is about to be murdered by his own brother. You are an FBI detective. Your job is to catch people who plan murder, isn't it? Frank looked at his niece, his eyes filled with conflict. He knew she was right. His duty was to uphold justice and stop crimes regardless of who the victim was. But this was the Moretti family. This was the underworld. One wrong step could mean death. "If you do not help me," Elena said, her voice breaking, "I will have to do this alone, and I will die. Sophia will lose her sister. My sister will die in that hospital with no one by her side. Can you live with that?" Frank closed his eyes and drew in a deep breath. When he opened them, his expression had changed. The hesitation was gone, replaced by resolve. "All right," he said. "I will help, but we have to do this the right way. No mistakes, no unnecessary risks. Do you understand?" Elena nodded, tears spilling over in relief. Thank you so much." Frank pulled out a small notebook and began to write. "We need to plant cameras and audio recording devices inside the mansion," he said, his tone now fully professional. "The library is the most important place because that is where Marco meets Victor. Dante's office needs coverage as well. The main living room and the dining room too. Can you install these devices without being detected?" "I am the cleaning staff," Elena replied. "I enter those rooms every day. No one will suspect anything." "Good," Frank nodded. "I will prepare the equipment, micro cameras, recorders hidden in outlets, in lamps, in places no one ever thinks to check. You will install them over the next 2 days, and as for the staged death, I will contact a forensic pathologist I trust. We will make it look as real as possible." Frank looked straight into Elena's eyes. "But you must remember one thing," he said gravely. "Once Dante fakes his death, you will be our only person inside the mansion. You will face Marco every day and pretend you know nothing. If you give anything away, you will be killed. Do you understand how dangerous this is?" Elena nodded, her eyes steady and fearless. "I understand," she said, "and I am ready." Thursday night arrived faster than Elena had expected, and over the past 2 days she had worked without rest, installing every recording device and camera exactly where Frank had instructed. In the library, she hid a miniature camera inside the landscape painting on the wall. In Dante's office, she placed an audio recorder inside the power outlet behind the bookcase. The grand living room, the dining room, the second-floor hallway, all of it was covered. No one suspected anything. No one noticed. She was only a maid doing her daily cleaning. That Thursday night, everything unfolded exactly as planned. Dante worked late in his office, as he always did. The light in the room stayed on until nearly 11 o'clock at night, something entirely normal for a man addicted to work. Elena carried a cup of black coffee into the room and set it on Dante's desk. "Your coffee, sir," she said loudly enough for the guards outside to hear. Dante nodded without looking up from the papers. "Thank you. You may go and rest now." Elena bowed her head and left the room, closing the door behind her, her heart pounding like a war drum. This was the moment it began. An hour passed. The Moretti estate sank into silence. Most of the staff had gone to sleep. Only a few guards continued their patrol outside. Marco had returned to his room at 9 o'clock, perhaps sleeping, or perhaps counting down every minute until the next day when his plan would be carried out, unaware that it would never happen. At exactly 12 o'clock midnight, Elena drew in a deep breath and then she screamed. Her cry tore through the quiet night, echoing down the hallway and piercing every closed door. "Mr. Moretti, is anyone there? Please help me. He is not breathing. Mr. Moretti is not breathing anymore." She ran into the hallway, tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking uncontrollably. It was not entirely an act. She was truly afraid. Afraid the plan would fail. Afraid someone would discover the truth. Afraid she would die that night. The entire mansion erupted into chaos. Lights flicked on everywhere. Servants poured out of their rooms, eyes heavy with sleep, but faces filled with panic. Guards rushed into Dante's office and immediately ran back out, their faces drained of color. "Call an ambulance," one of them shouted. "Hurry, the boss has no pulse." And then Marco appeared, running from the far end of the hallway, his robe disheveled, his hair a mess, his face etched with worry and fear. "What happened?" he shouted. "Where is my brother? How is my brother?" He pushed into the office, forcing his way through the crowd and dropping to his knees beside Dante's motionless body on the floor. "Brother," Marco shook Dante, his voice breaking. "Brother, don't scare me like this. Wake up. You can't die." Elena stood in the corner of the room, watching the scene unfold. She watched Marco clutch Dante, watched tears slide down his cheeks, heard his sobs, and if she had not known the truth, she would have believed she was witnessing a brother shattered by loss. But she knew the truth, and because of that she saw what no one else saw. For a single, fleeting moment, just one brief instant, when Marco believed no one was watching him, his eyes lit up, not with pain, not with grief, but with triumph, the glow of victory, the light of a man who had just achieved everything he desired, the light of a devil wearing a human face. Elena clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms until they nearly drew blood. She wanted to scream, to rush forward and tear away Marco's false face, but she could not. She had to keep playing her role. She had to keep pretending, because the plan had only just begun, and the worst was still ahead. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes, its siren tearing through the night as red lights flashed and reflected against the windows of the Moretti mansion. 2 paramedics rushed in with a stretcher, followed by a doctor Elena recognized immediately, the man Frank had contacted, one of the very few who knew the truth of this night. The doctor knelt beside Dante, placed a stethoscope on his chest, checked his pulse, shone a light into his eyes, every movement precise and professional, leaving no room for suspicion. The room fell into absolute silence as everyone held their breath. Marco stood close by, his face taut, his hands clenched at his sides. The doctor rose slowly, his expression darkening. "I am very sorry," he said in a voice weighted with practiced sorrow. "Mr. Moretti has passed away. The cause appears to be a sudden heart attack. There was nothing we could do." A sob broke out among the servants. Rosa, the elderly housekeeper, collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. Others stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they had just heard. Dante Moretti, the most powerful man they had ever known, was dead. Marco stepped forward and knelt beside his brother's body. He took Dante's cold hand and held it tightly, as if refusing to let go. "Brother," he whispered, his voice choked with grief. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. You are everything I have. You cannot leave me like this." Elena stood in the shadows of the room, watching it all. She watched Marco cry, heard his apologies, saw the way he clutched Dante's hand like a brother shattered by loss. And if she had not known the truth, she would have cried with him. If she had not heard what he said in the library that night, she would have believed Marco loved his brother. But she knew, and because she knew, she did not miss that moment. While everyone was focused on Dante's body, while the doctor filled out paperwork, while the servants wept, Marco turned his back to the crowd for a single second, just 1 second. And in that instant, Elena saw his true face. Marco was smiling, not a smile of pain or bitterness, not the smile of a man who had just lost his brother, but a smile of victory, a smile of satisfaction, the smile of someone who had achieved what he had desired for 27 years. The corner of his mouth curved upward, his eyes gleamed, and for one brief moment, he looked like a devil celebrating his triumph. Then the smile vanished as quickly as it appeared. Marco turned back, his face once again contorted with grief, once again wet with tears, once again the image of a brother broken by loss. But Elena had seen it. She had seen everything, and so had the camera hidden inside the painting on the wall. She clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. "Go ahead and